So,
Excellent.
anyways, are you ready to go here? We can just
I'm ready to go.
jump right into it.
Yep.
All right.
You start.
Will do. Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. My name is Aaron, as usual, and joining me this week is the, should I say, illustrious Mr. Jonathan Potts. Yeah, welcome to
The
the show,
illuminating.
buddy. Illuminating.
Thanks, pal. Thanks, pal. It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you too. So, Jonathan, you are an actor. You have done. I was actually looking at your resume the other day because you came up in conversation because said I was doing this, and they're like, "Oh, what does he do?" And so I'm like going down the list. I'm like, "He does this," and I'm like, "You have a huge resume. You've got a lot of stuff going on there."
Yeah, I've been at it. I've been at it for quite a while. You're right. I actually did an interview with a woman from Colorado, and she says your resume is quite extensive, but. That's just typical of a lot of, working actors that, sometimes people think, yeah, I think I know him. He's a little familiar. And then they look at the resume and they're like, wow, like he's worked a ton. It's because, I'm just a working actor and I've been at it a long time, so it just adds up over the ages.
Well, if you look Jonathan up on IMDb, you go down the list, you'd probably be like, I've seen that, and I've seen that, and I've seen that, and I've heard of that, and I've heard of that, and I'm not sure about that one, but it sounds cool, and
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Well, a little bit of backstory here. Back on, I think it's episode 4, I had Cynthia Preston on the show, who is a friend of yours, and you guys did The Legend of Zelda together. So I had her on as, the voice of Zelda, and now I have the other side of that coin as you as the voice of Link.
Sweet.
So I did her episode was called "Excuse Me, Princess," and I think I'll actually flip that one and call this one "Way to Go, Hero."
That's right. I was going to say she stole my line.
Yeah. Well, it was just a nice little flip back and forth there. Had I known actually at the time, I could change the name of the episode, but I didn't know that I would get this chance. So.
Right. No, keep it the way it is.
Yeah. Oh,
I actually saw Cynthia. What was it? 2 days ago.
Oh,
I
really?
went by to sign some more pictures.
Oh, cool.
For her because she wanted to give an autograph picture to some fan, so I swung by her house and signed that for her. So
That's awesome.
she's a good lady.
She's awesome and wonderful, and she got me. Well, when you were gone, but the last day at the convention we did, she gave, as a thank you from you guys, gave me a little stuffed squirrel. And tipped me quite well, and I was not expecting that. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, very good, very good.
And I believe that was from both of you, so thank you for that.
You're quite welcome.
Yeah. So, anyways, yeah, it's great to have you on the show. You, like I said, you were the voice of Link on Zelda, but you've done plenty of other things. As far as the I guess geeky side of stuff, you have been on The Strain in recent memory. You have done Jason X and. Which I didn't know too when you brought that up in the panel that we did.
Right.
Pretty awesome. Actually, here, let me I'll bring you up on IMDb real quick because I should just go down this list and count off the things. Be like, yep, that fits into the show. But you've done some other cartoon work and stuff as well. So anything? Yeah. I don't know if you're allowed to talk about the stuff you're working on right now. Or...
Yeah, I think I can. It's the one I'm working on right now is called Rusty Rivets.
Right.
And it's for little kids. Mm-hmm. It's a little kid cartoon. It'll be on Nickelodeon. And ironically, I just got an email today from the producer. Okay. Maybe she was an administrator with the cartoon, just giving me an update on what's going on, and she gave me the dates, and I will read them to you. Launch in November of 2016. Oh, cool. So on Nickelodeon in the U.S. and Treehouse in Canada. Yeah, and it's a little kid's cartoon. It's about a kid called Rusty, and he can solve all kinds of problems by using mechanics. Basically inventing little machines and stuff like that. So not the nerdiest of cartoons, but I think it's going to be quite sweet.
Animation in general has always been a huge passion of mine. So regardless of what the project is, I find that super interesting and fun. And voice acting is what got me into acting in the first place. It's my favorite thing. And part of the reason why I started the show is just so I could use my voice a bit more and do kind of my own thing like that. So
good idea. Good idea. Yeah, it is a lot of fun. And I was a huge fan of cartoons myself. I mean, I guess I don't know of many kids that say, no, I don't like cartoons. I think everyone loves them. But I did have a special passion for them as well. In particularly, the Warner Brothers stuff, Looney Tunes, that were way before my time. I mean, they were from some of them the 50s and 60s, certainly. So they were old when I watched them, but they were just so fantastic. And even the stuff that's being done now is unbelievable. The features that are being produced, and believe me, I wish I was in on them. If I could get into one of those big, Disney or Pixar things, that would be a thrill of a lifetime for me.
Oh man,
It would be huge. But I'm a fan of cartoons as well, and I enjoy doing all of them.
Oh yeah, I would kill to be in anything really, but if one of those big Pixar shows or something like that, or and too, I've always wanted to do like anime dubbing and stuff too. I think that would be a lot of fun.
Well, I did do a ton. In fact, I was one of the early guys in on that. I think I may have told you that I was when Sailor Moon was being done by Deke. Well, Deke was the company that did. Yeah, Deke was the company that did Legend of Zelda and Beverly Hills Teens that I was in. That was my first cartoon.
Yeah.
And when they got the gig to dub all of that Japanese stuff, I got the call because I was sort of their guy, because I did the young teenage thing. So I went in to do Tuxedo Mask. But they didn't like it. I mean, I did an episode or two, and then they recast me with, I think Reno Romano may have done them after me, or maybe Reno was first. I honestly don't remember. But they went through Reno and and then they went to Vince Carrazza, I believe, and then Toby after that. But I did that. But even before then, there was a company that did this. It's called a rhythmo band is the technique, and it was very technical. Mm-hmm. So if you can imagine, if you put on a movie projector and it's just a white screen, so you're looking at the bright white light. Well, imagine that screen is long and thin. So it's 2 feet wide and it's 10 feet long, mm-hmm. and it's in front of you in a dark room. And what they literally do is they had a person write in cursive on empty film stock so that the film is actually running sideways and it's all blank. So they write cursive and then it runs across the screen, and when it hits the left edge of the screen, or let's say a line, that's when you pronounce those words. And that's how those cartoons were done. Mm-hmm. So you had to read the rhythmo band and move your lips and say the words as it was crossing over that line. So they timed it best they could to try and match English to the Japanese. But I did some Japanese feature films, like live action feature films that way. Yeah, I did. There was a French-Canadian TV series that I dubbed into English, all on the rhythmo band, and it was the kind of thing that was it was a real technical skill, and it was really hard to do. So by the time Sailor Moon came along, and what was some of the other ones I did? It would be in front of you, I think. What are the little cats? What were they?
Samurai Pizza Cats?
No, not that one. Before that, there was one, I forget the name of it, but that was all done with this rhythmo band technique, and it was hard. You had to concentrate on what you're doing. It was much more difficult than doing like a Legend of Zelda, where we just had a script and it was more like a radio play where you perform it with energy. Come on, guys, we're gonna do it. You couldn't do that with the rhythmo band because you'd say that and then they say, no, you're way out of sync. You got to slow it down and start here and make sure you finish here. I was like, oh, jeez.
Yeah.
So it was way more work.
Did you mean the cats from Sailor Moon, or was there a show about cats that you?
No, what was the little Hello Kitty?
Oh, Hello Kitty. Yeah.
Hello Kitty.
That was my next guest.
yeah, sure. So I wasn't a regular in that series, but I did do a couple of episodes of it. But that stuff was all done with a rhythmo band.
So did the episodes that you did make it to the actual airing episodes, or did they completely redo them with the new cast?
I think they completely redid them only because there's now maybe if I went to IMDb and put the credit in myself, but you won't find me in the credits for Sailor Moon. Oh, yeah. So I suspect they just redid it.
Oh, okay.
It wouldn't have been a big deal. It would have taken the next, like Vince, a half an hour to redo an episode, or 45 minutes or an hour, whatever it was. So it's not like it's a big deal to have someone come in and redo it.
Right. Well, the fact that you even, were in that room and worked on that show, even though it didn't make it, like that's a pretty big deal in the fandom community.
Oh, well, yeah, and but you have to understand, at the time, these were obscure Japanese cartoons that were different looking from anything that we had seen. Like, I remember going in and looking at Sailor Moon with, what was her name? Marcia Goodman was a VP at Deke. And when I went in to first do Tuxedo Mask, she's like, okay, this is this cartoon. It's really cool, and sort of doing the setup, and we watched a bit of it, and I was like, holy smoke, this is bizarre. Yeah. It was nothing we'd seen before, and I wasn't even sure if I liked it. I thought, I think it's cool, but is it? I'm not really sure. So when we were doing this gig, revoicing this for the North American market, essentially, I remember thinking, I don't know if this is going to fly.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if American kids and Canadian kids are going to like this.
There's
But
a
it
lot
was a
of that
gig.
sentiment back then.
Oh,
There's a
of
lot of
course.
that.
So when I got when I heard that I was replaced, it was like, oh, well, it doesn't matter. Now, if I had known that, oh my gosh, it was going to be turn into this big deal where you'd go to conventions and make a lot of money and thousands of people would line up, that would have been much more pressure. But literally at the time, it was like, oh, well, they replay, okay, whatever, some weird cartoon. So I don't think anyone had, other than maybe the people at Deke,
Right.
because they knew how popular the cartoons were in Japan, I'm guessing. So they said, no, we've got to get on this bandwagon.
Yeah.
I'm guessing.
Well, I think Sailor Moon was one of my first animes that I was introduced to as a kid. So like Sailor Moon, Pokemon, and Dragon Ball Z were probably some of the most early things for me, and which kind of spread out. And you can actually see in my background here, I got Goku and Vegeta.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I've got some Sailor Moon stuff floating around here somewhere, and I've got some of the original Tokyo Pop comic books as well. Not the mangas, like the actual Sailor Moon comics, which has still to this day, in my opinion, some of the most beautiful manga art that exists. But yeah, and I actually tried to rewatch Sailor Moon recently, and it's a little rough.
Yeah.
But they remade it recently, and or I don't know if it's a remake or if Sailor Moon Crystal, if it's like a continuation. I'm not sure. I haven't sat down to watch it, which might be sacrilege in the fandom community, but I've heard it's very good.
Right.
So.
Right. I just remembered that I did some Beyblade.
Oh yeah.
I did some episodes of Beyblade too, because I can remember the fight scenes, where they had these things going into fight, and it was always like a stadium with 100,000 people in it, and I do remember that now. That just popped back into my head. So I have, what, I'm not even sure if it's on IMDb, but
that was from Nelvana, wasn't it? That wasn't Deke, or because
yeah,
I know they do it now. I don't know if they did it then.
No, I don't recall. It may have been Nelvana.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't remember.
I've personally never gotten super into. I mean, it's cool that you did that, but I've never been into Beyblade. But I do know some people who have been super into it in the past. I know a friend of mine used to do actual Beyblade tournaments, and he had a YouTube channel about it and everything. And yeah,
that's funny. I remember my boys playing. They had a Beyblade game, and I said, "Well, this is just battling tops."
Yeah,
when I was a little kid, it was battling tops.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I have one. I bought one at one point because I had a friend who really liked it and he wanted me to play with him. So I went out and bought one, and I think we played maybe once or twice, and then it found its way into a box somewhere. But I'm sure I have it floating around here somewhere.
That's funny.
Yeah, I don't really throw out stuff like that, so I'm sure it's over here.
hey, hold on to it. What the hell?
Yeah. So I guess to get into some more recent stuff, and we'll probably go back to Zelda at some point too. And maybe, I don't know if you want to talk about Con Bravo at all.
Sure. It was a good laugh. I don't think Cindy would like to, but
let me ask you, what were you thinking? Little inside joke for you there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, we had a good time though.
Yeah, I've got a funny story if you want to hear it.
Oh yeah.
And this is and your listeners will, I guess they'll have to hear the Con Bravo story to sort of put it into perspective. But, as an actor who is just a working actor, I'm not a star. I do get recognized every once in a while, but quite often when someone does recognize me, or even if they don't, but they say, "What do you do for a living?" and I say, "Oh, I'm an actor," the first thing out of their mouth is, "Well, what have you been in?" Mm-hmm. And I could list off 10 things that, of course, they've never seen. And they look at me like I have two heads, like, okay, you're not really an actor or whatever. Yeah. And I'm constantly sort of defending it, saying, well, no, I am an actor. I do this and I do that. But yes, you don't know who I am, but whatever. And it gets to the point where, and I may have told you this story, where if I'm at a party or something and someone says, what do you do? I say, I'm in advertising. Because sometimes I do a lot of advertising. I do voiceover, radio and TV commercial voiceover. So I just say, and that kind of ends this discussion. But if I say I'm an actor, it's like, oh, well, how come I haven't seen you before? And how come I don't, I know George Clooney, how come I don't know you? That sort of thing. So my funny story that ties into the Con Bravo thing is one night I had to go pick up my son. He was playing hockey and he had a practice late at night, and I went to pick him up, and they went a little late. So I stood there by myself. It was probably 11:30, and the night cleaner came by to chat with me. And now you have to imagine the night cleaner at a public hockey arena, missing a few teeth, kind of greasy hair, cap on sideways that said John Deere or something on the top. And he's looked at me and he goes, "You're that actor guy, aren't you?" Because I guess people had said, "Oh, there's an actor that, his dad, his son plays hockey." I said, "Yeah, that's me." And he proceeded to tell me about how acting was a terrible profession and that he thought of getting into it, but he told me, he said, "There's no career there, though, right?" And I automatically just laugh and go, "Yeah, you're right. It's very tough." And then I'm like, wait a minute. The night cleaning guy at a hockey arena is telling me like that he avoided the pitfalls of a crappy career and went with night cleaning at the arena. But that's the kind of abuse that actually happens. Like people say incredibly rude things, even though they're not meaning to. They just like, it must be tough being a failed actor because I'm not George Clooney.
Yeah.
So the Con Bravo thing, and I said this to Cynthia, so that your listeners understand, Cynthia and I went to this, we were invited to this Con Bravo thing. The coordinator thought that we would be quite popular, and we thought, well, why not? We've never done one before, and we're willing to give it a shot, and maybe there's some people that do want to meet us. So we did it, and it turns out that wasn't true at all, that no one really cared, that the crowd was a little young, the cartoon was too old, and they were all a lot of cosplay kids, so they were more into gaming and dressing up than actual cartoons. Mm-hmm. So it was fine, but at the end of the night, as we were sort of going to the bar to drown our sorrows, a conventioneer came up to us and said, "I have a question for you." We said, "Yes." He said, "What were you thinking?" And we both kind of paused and thought, like, well, what do you mean? What were we thinking by coming to the convention? He couldn't mean that. He must mean, what were we thinking when we did the cartoon? Well, it turns out he meant, what were we thinking when we did the cartoon? That it was a terrible cartoon and that it was sort of offensive to the gamers, that it had nothing to do with the game. And we're like, oh, that's perfect. That was the perfect end of the evening. It was much like the night cleaners saying, there's no career there. We're like, yeah. So Cindy and I went to the bar and had a few drinks.
I find that sentiment so funny about that too, is because like, yeah, sure, maybe now it's kind of a hokey cartoon, but like if you, at the time, all cartoons were pretty much just like that. And Zelda, I mean, the first Zelda did really well, but it didn't have quite the cult following that it does now. So it's like, at the time, it's just like, oh, cool, they made a Zelda cartoon. That's great. And I remember as a kid, like, I loved the Zelda cartoon. I loved Captain N. I loved the Mario stuff because, like, that stuff wasn't as readily available as it is now. So the fact that it existed at all was, like, amazing. Like, I think about it all the time. Like, when I was a kid, especially about, like, Pokemon, for example. Pokemon now is fucking everywhere. You can't go into a game store, a toy store, a mall. Like, you find Pokemon stuff at stores that are not even like Claire's and stuff like that. You can go in and find Pokemon stuff. When I was a kid, like, you'd be lucky if you could find anything at Walmart or anything like that. Like,
right
now, like, then there was a set run of toys, some very specific things. Like, they had some plushies, they had some bouncy balls, maybe a board game or two, and then there were the games, and that was it. Like, now there's socks, there's clothing lines, there's toys of all kinds, there's board games, there's a million different video games and spin-offs. Like, there's so much more to this IP than there used to be. And like back then, when it came to like quote-unquote nerd stuff, there wasn't a lot to do with it. And if you found anything, like, it was amazing. I remember being in a store one time as a kid, and I found Donkey Kong Country socks. It had Donkey Kong and what's the swordfish's name? I can't think of his name right now. Ungard, the swordfish. And I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever found in my whole life. I have to have these socks. Like, I'll never find anything this cool again. And that's what it was like then.
Well, at the time, I remember when the cartoon was on, it was quite popular. Mm-hmm. Like the little kids then, my two nieces included, and it was a popular cartoon because it was on the air. That's it.
Yeah.
And it was a little different from anything they'd seen before. Mm-hmm. And was it a great cartoon? No, not by any stretch. It was a real, those days, the 80s were kind of the dark years in terms of the quality of animation. Yeah. They really were cranking out stuff. It was all for toys, and the artistry in terms of the cartoons was it really took the back seat. They were not good cartoons. There's no argument about that. Not like nowadays. I mean, even the regular cartoons that you see now, and maybe it's to do with the computer animation, but still, there's artistry in many of the cartoons that are on now. Some of them, whether it's the writing. If the animation's not great, the writing is fantastic, or vice versa. It doesn't matter. But there was not a lot of care taken and put into these things, so I get it. But at the time, they were pretty popular.
Yeah.
And you know what? For people that are in their early 30s, that it might be it'll be more familiar to them and have a little more of a soft spot for them.
Yeah.
I think at Con Bravo that crowd was a little younger.
Yeah. Well, I went back and looked at, because like you guys you blew up the social media pages, but then I went back and looked at who was posting, and it was all the older crowd, and a lot of the ones that were posting didn't come to the convention.
Right.
And then there were a lot of people I noticed too. They're like, "Oh, I wish so much that I could be there, but I'm in Florida or something," you know?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
yeah.
And it was a long weekend, right?
Yeah.
It was so the whole timing was whatever. It was
Yeah.
fine.
Well,
I had fun.
Normally the con is the weekend before that one too, so that definitely probably had something to do with the crowd
Yeah,
being I thought that there wasn't as many people as there was the year before, so.
right. Oh well, it was still fun.
Yeah.
It was a good time. And and really honestly, I said to Cynthia, I said that guy at the end, he was perfect. Like that just sort of it was the bow on top of the package, right?
Yeah.
So that was fine.
Well,
that was fine.
If you, like, speaking of the quality and stuff though, if you line up Zelda with like the big shows at the time, like Transformers and He-Man and G.I. Joe, like the quality on those shows that are cult classics are not much better
No.
than like given that like the Transformers movie was phenomenal and it's still good animation and stuff, but if you look at the actual series, like the quality drops drastically.
Yeah.
Because the budget wasn't there.
No,
You know?
they just cranked them out as fast as they could.
Yeah.
No, they were terrible.
Yeah.
No, there's no doubt about it. I was in Swamp Thing too back then. I think we only did one season. I played Delbert. And terrible.
Yeah.
And I knew it at the time because like I said, I mean, compared to like a Bugs Bunny or Daffy or any of those, or even, and I'm getting confused on the timeline now, but like a Ren and Stimpy, or even in that time period, they didn't compare.
Yeah. Well,
But it was what it was. They're indicative of the time.
it's really hard to compare anything to Ren and Stimpy though, because that's like next level. That's like
Yes.
that's its own thing. Like nobody else has ever even done that since. So like that's
Right.
a different.
Yeah. Have you watched any Rick and Morty?
Oh my God, yes, I love Rick and
Like,
Morty.
so Rick and Morty is like at another level, right?
Oh,
it's,
yeah.
It's just it's so fantastic.
Yeah, I just read yesterday that what's this? Is it Dan or one of the guys who makes that show?
Dan Harmon.
Yeah, Dan Harmon, or there's two of them. Justin
Yeah.
Roiland, is that his name?
Right.
Yeah, they just founded a VR game studio called like Squanchin Games or something like that. It's like I am Squanchin here. So
cool.
they made because he's obsessed with VR, and so they're getting into this realm. I'm like, that's really cool. I can't wait to see what they come up with.
No kidding.
Oh.
No, that will be awesome. Yeah, those guys are brilliant.
Yeah. Oh man.
That's
yeah,
a great cartoon.
There are a few people like them that have come around. Like once in a generation, you get them. Like I think they're probably our Ren and Stimpy of the time.
Right.
So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Somebody who said recently that he thinks that those guys are some of the funniest guys on the planet right now, and I'd be like, yeah, probably.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I still love Family Guy.
Oh yeah.
Simpsons is still funny, but Family Guy is incredible. I love the Archer, that series as well. Like that's so funny. Bob's Burgers, love it too.
Yeah, I love H. John Benjamin. That guy's amazing.
Yes,
he's hilarious.
Yeah, just great. Like what a voice. Like it's not even put on. It's just him.
Yeah.
But he's one of those voices. He just talks and you start laughing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah, he is.
I wanted to mention again, for this probably last bit about quality of animation, but I went to rewatch Thundercats recently, and it's brutal to watch. Like it's pretty rough, and so like I guess on the final note of the whole like, oh, what were you thinking on that show? It was so bad. It's like, yeah, everything was bad back then.
Well, that's it.
That's it. But given it's produced a lot of, like, they remade Thundercats recently, and it was phenomenal. Like, it was really well done. And I mean, cool. I still love all these old cartoons and stuff too. Like, there's a special place in my heart for, Thundercats and all these shows, and the characters that everybody hates, like Snarf, 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 Lion-O, call the Thundercats. And I guess I have an affinity for characters that people hate. Like I love Snarf and I love Slimer and I love these characters that nobody else does.
Right, that's funny. Well, do you just as you maybe think of this? Do you remember? It's before your time, but Thunderbirds.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Remember Thunderbirds, the
Thunderbirds
spy thing? Yeah. Now that show, I can remember watching that because it was a little before my time. Like I remember, and it's funny, I'd completely kind of forgotten about that cartoon
Mm-hmm.
until I saw it online or someone talked about it, and I was like, oh, wait a minute. I remember watching that with my dad. It was the only time I ever watched a morning cartoon, quote unquote, show with my father, and he got quite a kick out of it. And it was puppets. And they were crudely done. Like it wasn't, it was a puppet show. But boy, I remember loving it.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of still holds up, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the puppets and the stuff they did in that show like are are so well like this their just style is really good, and like
That's right.
that's one of those types of shows that will never not hold up because the writing in that show is pretty good too,
Oh yeah.
and like the characters and the ships and everything are so cool. I actually I hadn't heard of that show until I was in high school because they started showing it on Tech TV back when it was still Tech TV.
Ah,
And then I'm
okay.
like, this is what is they had it on. It was a late night show too at like 11 o'clock time slot. It was weird, but
Right.
like I remember watching that show. I'm like, this is interesting. I've never even heard of this. And then like looking into it, I'm like, oh, this show's been around forever. How do I not know what this is? Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it was, I mean, I'm guessing about this, but it was kind of in the vein of Star Trek, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't for kids. It was a full-on sci-fi show,
Yep.
but with puppets.
Yep.
And yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
Much like what was the name of the movie that the Trey Parker did with the puppets?
Team America.
Team America. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was like they clearly they were influenced, right? They
Oh
they
yeah.
loved it as well. So
I've heard rumor. I don't know if it's true, but they've been talking about either doing a remake series or a movie or something of Thunderbirds, or maybe
I
I
heard
don't
the
know if
same
that was
thing.
true, but
Yeah, I heard the same thing.
yeah, it's pretty
That
cool.
would be cool.
Yeah. So to get into some more recent stuff, in the last few years, you've worked on The Strain, which is my dad is super into that show,
Oh,
and
is he?
yeah, yeah. And so I told him when I got back, I was like, hey, and I know you love a show. I made a friend who was in it. He's like, oh, who was he? And I told him, he's like, I remember that, and he gets killed.
Yes, violently.
Yeah, that whole
Yes.
show's pretty violent. Like,
Yeah, it's pretty gruesome.
yeah,
It's pretty gruesome.
that's pretty much all. I think that whole is any of that filmed outside of Toronto, or is it all Toronto?
It's all Toronto.
Yeah.
I don't think they go anywhere else. The main studio, it's such a big show. I think they've taken up a few different places. I worked at the studio was down at
Mm-hmm.
Kipling and Lakeshore, and then we were on location at the hospital where, for your listeners, I played the pilot, Captain Redfern, who flies the original jumbo jet that carries the bad demon seed into Manhattan. So I play the pilot, and when I end up in the hospital, that was done at Bridgepoint, but the rest of the stuff was all studio stuff. And I have an actory story for you about that. When I got the audition, and it turns out that the audition, and this is quite common, where if they want to see you, if they want to see what you look like and how you act and the way you are, is that sometimes they won't even give you the sides, meaning pieces of the script.
Right.
Usually, when you get an audition, they lift a scene or two, or three or four.
Or sometimes they make up fake scenes.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that the one I got was a fake one,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't know that, but the scene I got was essentially a big monologue, where the doctor in the hospital is recovering from the accident. And when I say accident, let me go back a bit. So you're given a little bit of information, but quite often they don't tell you the whole story because they don't want it leaked, right? They don't tell you the whole story, but they just say, you're auditioning for the captain of an airliner. There's been an incident and everyone on board is dead and you survived and you're in the hospital. That's it. So, and then I'm given this big, like there's an interview scene with Corey Stahl and whatever her name was, and where I'm telling about what happened. Well, I was doing this, and then then this happened, and I just want to find out what happened and get me to the end of this. And then they say, do you remember what was the last thing you remember? And he says, I don't really remember anything. I was coming in for final approach, and then I say, and they're about to leave, and I say, oh, I do remember one thing. And they say, what's that? Well, then I have this big monologue, and I talk about how when I was a little boy and I used to stay at my grandmother's house, and it was right beside this cemetery, and every night at 3 a.m. Oh, and she had this big armoire in her room. Now, I remember in the plane there was a big case that had the bad guy in it. He said there was this big armoire, and every night at 3 a.m. the church bell would chime, and then I'd look at this armoire, and this hand would come out of the thing, a long bony hand, and I called him Mr. Snakeskin or something, and he would come out, and and it was quite terrifying. And they'd say, that's it. And I say, well, I'm telling you, he's the only thing I can say is that he's back. So I did this monologue, and the guy who's running the audition says, that was great. He goes, but just so you know, the plane didn't crash. The plane lands safely, but everyone is dead. Like, the pilot passes out, the plane lands, and so I'm like, oh, well, wait a minute. I assumed that the plane crashed, so that I'm in the hospital. So as an actor, I'm playing the scene. I'm in pain. Mm-hmm. I've got all kinds of injuries. It's hard to breathe, right? I'm racked with guilt because I crashed the plane and killed 300 people. And when he explained this to me, I'm like, oh, that's totally different. Like, that means he's confused, he's puzzled, and he wants answers to things, like, that. And he says, well, do it again. So I did it again, but I didn't really have time to process all that. So I did the scene again, and then I left, and I thought, that was the worst audition I've ever done. That was terrible. Like,
That's when you get a callback every time.
Right. Well, I didn't even get a callback. I got the gig.
Oh, wow.
I didn't even go in to meet Guillermo. Like, I just got it from the audition, and I was like, oh my God. Like, I nearly called the casting director to apologize for that piece of shit, to say, look, I was confused. I didn't know. I assumed he was dead or, hurt. But anyway, that's how I got the gig for that. Yeah. And then of course there was no monologue in the script. It was all just fake that they wrote.
You know what I was gonna say? Probably why you did that is the fact that, like, you read it one way. They're like, okay, it's actually like this, and then you're like, oh, immediately get it and flipped it, and then they see that whole range in one go, and they're like, this is our guy.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe they say, you know what, this guy made a good adjustment there, or whatever. And I know Guillermo likes me. When we worked together, he shot the pilot, and then they had other directors for the other 2 episodes. Mm-hmm. He quite liked me, and he was telling people that he thought I was a very good actor. And in fact, I just auditioned for him again. He's doing a new film called The Shape of Water. Oh, cool. And I didn't get the part. A guy I've known for many, many years, I know him. He did get it. But I auditioned with Guillermo and the producer, Miles Dale, and he loved it. He was like, Jonathan, that was a very good audition. Like, that's great. You're really good. So I know I was being considered. So, yeah, you know what? It's nice to know that Guillermo's a bit of a fan, that he thinks I'm good, but it still, doesn't mean you're going to get that gig.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it just means that he might, every time he does a project, he might call you again. Every time he thinks he has something for you.
That's right. That's right. So
that might lead to something even better down the road.
Yeah, and keep rolling the dice. That's all I can do, But that was a cool show. It was a lot of fun and certainly gruesome. And I got to meet Sean Astin.
Yeah, I was just going to mention
the ultimate. Yeah. So he played a guy who I end up having a big fight with down in the kitchen, and we have a big battle, and I throw him over a table, and then ultimately I get my head bashed in with the fire extinguisher. But what a thrill it was. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the Lord of the Rings series. Mm-hmm. And so to
get right in around these parts.
That's right. Yeah. And to get right in with him and get the chance to, we spent 3 days, I think, shooting that final, my death scene, ultimately. And, we just spent a lot of time chatting and talking. And I asked him a lot of questions about Lord of the Rings. And interestingly, I don't know if I told you this before, Aaron, but one of the first gigs I did when I may have been 15. I don't even know if I was old enough to drive. I was an extra in a movie that his mom starred in, Patty Duke.
Oh, cool.
And he remembered that. He's like, oh, I remember that movie. Oh my God, you were in that. He just thought that is so amazing. Now, what I didn't know at the time was that his mom was actually very sick. Mm-hmm. Because you remember she just passed away. I don't know, 6 months ago, 7 months ago, something like that.
Yeah.
So he would have been dealing with her illness at the time. But so it was neat for me to give him something to be excited about in a small way, as opposed to just him, having me nerd out so much. But yeah, very nice guy. For all you fans of Lord of the Rings and Sean Astin, very nice guy. Very nice guy.
He's definitely on my list of actors that I would love to meet, but eventually, if I could ever work with, it would be amazing. Just because, I mean, he's an amazing actor. He's a cool guy. He's been in so much awesome stuff and involved in so many cool things. And The Goonies for sure as well, which is like
right.
was filmed here in my home state, which is awesome.
Cool.
And yeah, he would be. I had briefly met Elijah Wood and a couple of the other cast members. I went to the red carpet of the Hobbit Battle of Five Armies, so I got to see, a bunch of, including Ian McKellen, which was
Cool.
being next to that man is like, you can feel it, like standing
I
there.
bet.
You're like, you're not mortal.
Yeah, yeah. No, someone like him, like he's on another planet, right? Because
Yeah.
not only is he a slash movie star, and then Gandalf, for God's sake,
Yeah.
like such an iconic, huge character, but he's also like a massive theater actor
Mm-hmm.
with huge respect from everyone. Like he's a real actor
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to just a movie star. And believe me, you've met him and I've met him. There are movie stars and there's actors,
Mm-hmm.
and he's both. So that would have been a thrill, I'm
Oh, yeah.
sure.
I met, I got to see several people from that show, and pretty much everybody, even the up and coming guys, like it's a different level when they're in something like that. Like, I mean, of course, like Benedict Cumberbatch was there, and Orlando Bloom and all these guys. It's just a different feeling, than like
Yep.
when I'm acting with my other friends and stuff like that. So,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's something about the combination of all of the above
yeah.
that just gives you this sense of gravitas. You know what? I had an experience. I shot a film. What was it called? I can't remember now. But I got to work with Gregory Hines, F. Murray Abraham, and who was the Judd Hirsch. So there was those three guys in one room. But I remember being in awe of F. Murray Abraham because when I was in theater school, I also took a film class and we watched Amadeus in that film class. And I remember watching that film and just being blown away
Yep.
by F. Murray Abraham. Like he was head and shoulders above anything I'd ever seen. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, that guy is so good. And he's good in everything since. So when I got to meet him and I had to work with him, that was probably the most I'd been, not intimidated isn't the word. I wasn't intimidated, but kind of in awe. And he's not a big man. Like he's
Yeah.
the same size as me. He's not a big dude, but I'll tell you, man, when the cameras rolled, holy shit, he was like 7 feet tall.
Yeah.
Just I've heard the same thing. Friends of mine that worked with Russell Crowe said that when after action he just becomes this monster of an actor. Like something happens where you're just like, oh my God. And I don't have that. I certainly don't now, unless if I was to luckily get some really awesome role in some big movie that you would begin to take that on. But that's what you need. Like you need a career of doing massive awesome roles, and then it just becomes a part of who you are. And it's kind of hard to explain unless you've seen it. And it sounds like you've seen it. Like you've been beside him.
Mm-hmm.
You've been beside Gandalf, and you're like, wow.
Yeah. Well, it's you can feel, it's like you're Gandalf, but you're more than that kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's.
Oh yeah.
You can
A buddy of
feel
mine-
everything about him.
Yeah, a buddy of mine who is named Nelson Ferrara. He's a post-production sound supervisor, and he has a film company, sound company called Sound Dogs. And he was in a facility once, and he said Nicole Kidman came walking in, and he said the air went cold, like it not in a bad way, like, but he just said everything froze. Like she was tall, stunningly gorgeous, movie star, had high heels on, but he just said she was unbelievably awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And she's a great actress too.
Yeah.
But he said, yeah, it was incredible. There's something about some movie stars.
You mentioned with Russell Crowe and how like the cameras roll and he just like he turns it on and he goes and it's like he becomes a monster. And actors like that where it's like, and Ian McKellen has said this too. He's like, before the camera rolls, I'm Surrey and the camera turns on, and I'm Gandalf. You shall not pass. And then he
That's
says
right.
cut, and then I'm back to Surrey, and that's the type of acting that I really respect because, like, you hear stories about like recently like Jared Leto's Joker, where he was like sending people rats and doing all these really dumb things and embodying like method stuff, and I'm like, that to me is not really acting. Like, if you can't turn it off and on and you have to be in that. I mean, there are some stories where actors have done really cool things. Like on The Lord of the Rings, one of the dwarves, even off camera, kept talking in this like dwarven accent through the whole set until he was wrapped, and then he was American and he dropped into his American thing. They're like, why are you putting on that weird accent? He's like, no, this is my real accent. And they're like, no, it's not. And he's like, yeah, it is. And like, I find that hilarious and awesome. But then some people take it a little too far, you know?
Yeah, well, I'd heard that Viggo was a bit like that.
Yeah.
That he, wasn't showering for days upon time, and that, people were like, oh God, I got to work with you. Like you're smelling pretty bad. I'd heard a story about Dustin Hoffman when he was doing Marathon Man with Laurence Olivier.
Right.
I think it was Marathon Man. And, where's the torture scene and all that kind of stuff. And where Dustin Hoffman was trying to stay in character, trying to be like, I'm going to stay doing this, I'm going to do this. And I think Olivier was getting annoyed. Mm-hmm. And he said, like, what are you doing? He said, well, I'm trying to stay and, I've got to maintain this. And he said, why don't you just act it, my boy? Yeah. And it really was like, oh, if that's a Laurence Olivier telling me to, like one of the greatest actors of all time, just to say, act it, like turn it on. And there was a great clip I saw of Silence of the Lambs. Who was it? Not Jodie, but the guy who was in Silence of the Lambs.
Here, let's look it up. I have the internet.
Oh, yeah.
Oops.
Why can't I think of who it is?
Silence of the Lambs.
Your listeners are yelling out his name.
Yeah, probably.
It's him, you idiots!
Do you know the character's name?
Yeah, it's Hannibal.
Yeah, no, yeah. Anthony Hopkins.
Anthony Hopkins, thank you.
I could see his face, but I couldn't think of his name.
So Anthony Hopkins, I believe he won the Oscar for that film, where he is, down in the jail cell, and he's super chilling, and he's just like looking straight at the character and not doing, it's all with his eyes. He's doing classic film acting. And I saw, it was either a clip or someone describing it to me, I can't remember now, but he was literally on set reading a book. And they'd be like, okay, everyone rolling, okay, sound speed, and he'd put the book down, action, and then he'd do his scene, and they cut, and he'd go back to his book. Mm-hmm. Like he was literally turning it on to do the scene and then turning it off. Was not caught up in the whole, staying in character and all that. He had that because acting, there is certainly emotion involved. You have to bring your emotions to the table because there are scenes like in this, like the film I just did. We'll get to it with Anon that I did with Clive Owen. I have to cry. I just witnessed my son's death, and I have to sit in front of Clive Owen and break into tears. You have to draw upon your emotions to do that. But for a lot of it, it's also very technical. There's mechanics involved in looking in a certain place. And, you go online, there's a great, several clips by who's the other British actor?
Well, there's only 4 of them, so.
Yeah, there's only 4 of them.
There's John Hurd.
Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, Michael Caine.
Okay.
So if you go on YouTube and look at film acting technique with Michael Caine, he gives seminars on acting for film, and it's quite brilliant. And it's all mechanics. It's all look at, if the camera's on this side and you're doing a scene with that person, look at that eye because it's closest to the lens.
Right.
Don't blink. When it's your close-up, you don't blink. And little things like that. It's brilliant.
I definitely, taking film courses and whatnot, that's probably where some of my teachers got their information from, because I remember that very specific thing. Cheating your eyes out to the camera mm-hmm. at the right moments, being aware of where it's at. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we have about 10 minutes left. We're getting towards the tail end of the show here.
Okay.
Man, there's so many things that we could still go on about.
Quick, pick something.
Jesus, what were you thinking, Jonathan? I'm never gonna forget that. Like when I came up to you and you told me, I'm like, what did he say? What did he say to you?
Yeah, he's like, excuse me, I have a question. And we thought, he's gonna ask, how did we get into voice acting or whatever? He says, what were you thinking? Yeah. And I think he was saying, how dare you create a cartoon that was so insulting to the game? I think that was really what it was about. But, what this poor gentleman didn't understand is that we didn't create the cartoon. We didn't say, hey, that video game is really popular. Let's create a cartoon to piggyback on the back of that and make money. Yeah. We were actors. We got hired to do a gig. That was it. But anyway.
I think I came in, I missed that part, but I came in midway in that conversation, and he was asking you guys about someone had Crystal Pepsi, and he's like, he said I could have some. Do you know where he is? And I was just like, why do you think we give a shit? Like, I don't give a crap where your Crystal Pepsi is. You know? And then you told me he said that, and I was just like, oh, I would have told him to fuck off.
Yeah, in the game that we did, one of the prizes was like a booby prize was a bottle of Crystal Pepsi, and I think that guy was in the game and he was told he could get some Crystal Pepsi. So that was after insulting us, then he was like, "Oh, where can I pick up my Crystal Pepsi from the game?" Like, I don't know. I don't remember what we said to him.
Let me go down this list. I don't know. I don't care.
I don't care.
Go fuck yourself.
Well, no, we were polite.
We certainly did have a fun weekend, though, in spite of that. And then I wish you guys could have come after everything was done, the con was over. We had kind of like a con staff party thing, and a couple of our other guests were there as well. ALB, and you met Angie, correct? Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, you met her, and
with the pretty lady in the yellow dress.
Yeah, with the pretty pink hair.
Yeah.
We loved her.
Yeah, she was a doll.
So we all had a party at the end of the night, and we got we realized how late it was, and I was starting thinking, man, we're being really loud. And about that time, we hear a tap 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 on the door, and we're like, who's coming in the door? And like Jordan had just left, and so like, did he get locked out or what? And then we open the door, and it's one of like concierge security. They're like, if you guys don't quiet down, we're gonna kick you out. And we're like, oh, okay. And then Jordan had come back too. He's like, I saw him when I was going in the elevator coming out of it. And I was like, I bet he's going to our room.
Right. That's
it was
funny.
Like 3 a.m. and I had realized, oh shit, there's other people here that aren't cons goers anymore.
Yes. Yeah.
So, but we had a good time.
That's funny.
So is there any other projects or anything you're working on right now?
Well, you know what? I did at the beginning of August. I've had a busy month. Not big parts, I will confess, but a nice part in a film called Anon, that with Clive Owen that I shot at the beginning of the month. It's still shooting. I just did a funny part in a new series. Conan O'Brien is the executive producer, and I think it's for Turner. In the U.S., it's called People of Earth. I don't think it's up on. Oh, it might be up on IMDb now. So that was fun. And there's a new another comedy called Working Moms, created by Catherine Reitman, Ivan Reitman's daughter. And that was kind of fun. So I just did that this month, and of course I still got, like I said, Rusty Rivets. But I'm going to head out to Vancouver, I think, in October, to beat the bushes out there and see. I'll be close to you.
Yeah, I'll come up. Hey, let me know.
If you're that way, how far away would it be?
I think it's about a 7 or 8 hour drive.
That's not so bad.
Yeah, and my car gets stupid good gas mileage, and it's like I at a quarter of a tank costs $16 to fill up my car. So
wow,
it's awesome.
What kind of car is that?
It's a Chevy Spark.
Oh yeah.
Really
I think
good
a buddy of
mileage.
mine just bought one of those.
They're really nice to drive. I'm really liking it, and they're comfortable.
And cheap, right? Like not expensive.
Yep, I got mine on a really good deal it's only 2 years old for $8,000.
Holy smoke!
Yeah, pretty much brand new, under 40,000 miles.
Yeah,
fully
that
covered.
Is awesome.
So,
excellent.
I took it in this week because I was worried about the clutch because there was something that made a sound. I'm like, uh-oh. So I went and took it in, and they're like, yep, nope, you're good, and covered it. Everything's great. Didn't have to pay a dime.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Sweet. So I don't know what else to tell you, brother. I'm not sure what else is happening. I'm developing a TV show that I'm hoping to pitch. I've got an executive producer on board.
Yeah.
Trying to find a showrunner for it. We approached one, but he's already working on Jay Baruchel's new series in LA, so he had to decline, but he did love it, which is a good sign.
Mm-hmm.
So we've reached out to another one. So that's it. I mean, I don't have much else to tell you. But you know what? If anything big happens, Aaron, you'll be the first guy I call, buddy.
Awesome.
Let you know what's happening. Yeah.
Well, there is one thing I remembered that I was going to mention earlier, but I better mention it, or else anybody who goes and looks at your page, that because it's fairly big deal. But you have been on a couple episodes of Supernatural.
Oh yes, yes. Great show.
Mm-hmm.
Love that show. I did the season 3. Was the first one I did, and I was in the last episode of that. That was the cliffhanger when the brother is trapped in hell, and I was the father of the little girl that was possessed by one of the demons, and she was killing her. She killed her grandfather and killed all the neighbors, and I played her dad. So it was a cliffhanger. It was the end of the season, so that was pretty cool. And then lo and behold, 8 years later, they're still going. Mm-hmm. And I was back in Vancouver, so I got another. They had me back, and I play a part of a manager of a senior citizens home. And in this episode, there's a banshee that is an ancient banshee that is attacking weak people. And I'm weak because my wife had just left me. And the banshee essentially gets inside your head and screams. And the only way you automatically, to stop the screaming, people just stop bashing their heads against walls or whatever. So I bash my head against the wall, and I go through a window, and I go crashing through the window and land 4 stories down. And the banshee comes and starts eating my brain. So it was nice and gruesome and a lot of fun. And that show is still rocking. And I was talking to Jansen Ackles, one of the lead guys, who your people will know, of course. Yeah. Really nice guy. I'll tell you. I worked with both of them in the first episode, and they were both very nice. And then Jansen in the second one, and he remembered me, which was fun. And we sat down together for quite a while and chatted about being fathers and what it's like, being in the business. And he talked about how, the challenges for him being a wealthy man and trying to raise normal children. And he was very honest and candid, and knew that he had, that it was a difficult thing. It was a challenge to raise kids unaffected when you essentially have enough money to buy them whatever they want. Right. And but he was raised, in a normal family. He said his dad, I think, sold aluminum siding or something like that. But just a really nice, normal guy. Yeah. The fans would be nice to know. And he said that, interestingly, when we talked about how the show's been going so long, it's been 11 seasons now, and he said, well, you know what did it? He said it was Netflix. When Netflix came along, he said it brought in a whole new generation of fans, and the show got completely revitalized. And so they're still going strong. Yep. With no end in sight. He said they were told they can go as long as they want.
They've definitely surpassed the 6 seasons in a movie thing.
Oh yeah.
They should still do a movie though. Maybe that'd be pretty good.
That would be. I think people would go to see it.
Oh yeah, they would.
I don't know if you watch the show. I don't watch it anymore. But when I was shooting my episode back in almost a year ago, back in October, they were still giddy with excitement from shooting an episode, just the one or maybe 2 before, that was entirely...
It's gotta be a fun show to do, like...
Well, it was, but this episode was shot entirely from the car's perspective.
Oh, that's
I said,
interesting.
what do you mean? Yeah, he said, yeah, you don't see anything except what happens in front of the car, from the car's perspective. And he said it was awesome. So I actually may try to look that one up and try and find it on Netflix, because that just sounds like it was so cool. Like they got to come up with some interesting ideas, right? After 11 seasons, the well's getting pretty dry, but boy, that's so creative. I think that's awesome.
I've only ever heard good things about working with that crew and those guys, so it's good to know again to reinforce that those are cool dudes to work with. So
absolutely, and the crew is pretty much the keys are pretty much the same guys they started with. They're like a family. Yeah, and they love each other, and they're good. Oh my God, they're like finishing each other's sentences practically. They're a very well-oiled machine. So it's a nice little gig they got going there for sure.
Yeah. Even Stephen Amell from Arrow, he was talking on Facebook one time about how he meets with them sometimes and learns from them, and he's like, how nice they are, and they're always giving him tips and advice, and he's just like, those guys are so cool. So like, if Oliver Queen is saying that they're cool, they're probably cool dudes.
Yeah, they really are. They really are, which is nice, because they could, let's face it, they could be dickheads.
Yeah.
11 seasons, they got the world by the pants, and just to be that good looking, they could be arrogant dickheads. Even if they were plumbers, they could be idiots for being that tall and good looking. But no, they were nice chaps.
So if you find yourself, like you said, you're going to Vancouver, if you find yourself either on that show or any of the CW stuff, especially the Flash, if you find something in the Flash, if you get on the Flash, that'll be 3 people I know that have been involved in that show.
Cool.
Yeah,
okay.
Which is pretty awesome.
Well, my mind just blanked. Tom Cavanaugh, he's on the Flash, I think, right? Isn't he the doctor, the scientist doctor?
Yes.
Or is he on Arrow? I think he's on the Flash.
Cavanaugh. Yeah, no, he's Dr. Wells.
Well, right.
Flash.
He and I used to work at the Keg together.
Yeah.
Years ago. And in fact, he went to university with my wife. So I've known Tom. We did a commercial together before he got Ed. That was his
Oh,
big
wow.
break when he did Ed. And I haven't spoken to him since because he's a big star now, but he works nonstop. But he's also a very nice guy.
Yeah, he's actually the Flash is my favorite superhero of all time, but he, as far as that show goes, my favorite part of the show.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, especially after they, spoiler alert, they brought him back and all those different things went on. But
Right.
Yeah, he's cool. I like him a lot. But hey, if you ever run into him, be like, hey, I know a kid. He's got a podcast. You're like,
I absolutely will. I absolutely will.
I know
No kidding.
that's a long shot, but hey, you never know.
Well, just running into him will be a long shot, but I could try to reach out. I'd love to have a beer with him, and I'm sure he would. And I guess he's in Vancouver, so I could, when I'm there, I'll see. But
Cool.
yeah, I put in a word for you. Of course I would.
Cool. Try to line up the beer when you let me know when you're there, and then I'm on my way. And then
You
be like,
got
oh,
it.
by the way, this is my friend. Be like, hello, Mr. Kavanagh.
It's like, who's this other beer for? Oh, it's for Aaron. He'll be here in a
Yeah,
second.
don't worry. He's a big deal.
He's a big deal.
He's being
That's right.
casually late. All right, man. Well, hey, 59 minutes on the dot here.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much for joining me on this show. Do you into the social media at all? Anywhere anybody can find you? Instagram, Twitter, anything?
You know what? I don't have any of that stuff. I mean, I'm on Facebook, but I don't accept like everyone that asks.
Yeah.
I think I should maybe get on Instagram. Honestly, I'm just not one of those guys. It's not that I'm, I love talking to people. I have no problem with it. It's just something in my psyche. I'm not a big self-promoter, which is not a good thing when you're an actor. I should be more into it. But if I ever get into that stuff, I'll let you know for sure. But I appreciate that. And then if I do, then you can put out the word for me.
Sure, I'll do that. Well, of course, you can look up Jonathan on IMDb, and you can check out his movies and television shows and stuff if you'd like. That being said, thank you so much for listening to this episode. As usual, if you want to find more from us, you can go to youtube.com/pixelitch. That's PIXELLITCH. The T is important. And I think that'll about do it for this week. Thank you so much for joining me.